The silence of the North Atlantic is deafening. Down here, nearly 4,000 meters deep, rests the corpse of the greatest ship ever built. The pressure is crushing. The darkness is absolute. History books will tell you that nature destroyed the Titanic. They will blame the ice. They will blame the freezing temperatures. They will blame the arrogance of man. But history is often incomplete. The Titanic didn't die just because of an iceberg. The fate of 1,500 souls was sealed days before the ship even left the port. It wasn't a mechanical failure. It wasn't a curse. It was sealed by a simple, human mistake. A moment of forgetfulness that cost billions. A tiny piece of metal left inside a man's pocket. It is important to remember the mindset of that era. They called it the unsinkable ship. This arrogance was their blindfold. Captain Edward Smith had crossed the Atlantic countless times. He believed that technology had finally conquered nature. No one checked the equipment lists thoroughly. No one double-checked the lockers. Why would they? In their minds, the Titanic was a floating palace, invincible to the dangers of the sea. This overconfidence is exactly why a small detail, like a missing key, could go unnoticed until it was far, far too late. To understand this tragedy, we must go back to the beginning. Meet David Blair. In April 1912, Blair was a proud man. He was 37 years old, experienced, and deeply respected. He was assigned as the second officer of the Titanic for its maiden voyage. For weeks, Blair lived on the ship. He knew every corridor, every door, and every lock. He was responsible for the equipment. He held the keys to everything. But, just days before the departure, the White Star Line made a sudden, bureaucratic decision. They wanted a senior officer, Henry Wilde, from a sister ship, to take over as chief officer for the big premiere. This created a domino effect in the hierarchy. Everyone was bumped down a rank. And David Blair? He was the odd man out. He was removed from the crew entirely. Imagine his frustration. Blair was disappointed. He had to pack his bags in a rush on April 9th while the ship was preparing to leave Southampton. The port was chaotic. Cargo was being loaded. Thousands of passengers were boarding. Noise, smoke, confusion. In his hurry to leave the ship before it sailed, Blair made a fatal error. He forgot to hand over one specific item to his replacement, Charles Lightoller. He shook hands, grabbed his coat, and walked down the gangway. Unknowingly, he carried the safety of the entire ship in his pocket. A small, brass key. The key labelled Crow's Nest Telephone and Binoculars. Without this key, the locker containing the ship's special eyes would remain locked forever. Fast forward to the night of April 14th. The Titanic is sailing through the middle of the Atlantic. High up in the Crow's Nest, lookouts Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee are staring into the abyss. It is a strange night. There is no moon. The ocean is calm like a black mirror. Usually lookouts can spot icebergs because waves break against the base of the ice, creating a white foam. But tonight, the water is still. There is no white foam. Up in the nest, the conditions were brutal. The temperature had dropped to near freezing. The wind cut through their coats like knives. Fleet and Lee weren't just standing there silently. They were complaining. They were worried. Survivors reported that earlier that day, the lookouts had specifically asked the officers for the binoculars again. They knew the danger. They knew the ice field was ahead. Imagine standing on the edge of the world, tasked with protecting 2,000 lives, knowing you don't have the one tool you need to do your job. They were straining their eyes, tears streaming down their faces from the cold wind, trying to spot a black shadow on a black ocean. But the binoculars were there, sitting in a wooden box just a few feet away from them, locked behind a door that they could not open, because the key was sitting in a wardrobe in Southampton. Without binoculars, the human eye has limits, especially in pitch-black darkness. By the time Frederick Fleet saw the black shape blocking out the stars, it was too late. The iceberg was right in front of them. He rang the bell 3 times. He screamed into the phone, "Iceberg right ahead!" But physics is cruel. A ship of that size, moving at 22 knots, cannot turn on a dime. The officers on the bridge tried their best. They reversed engines. They turned the wheel hard to port. They needed time, but time had run out. Experts believe that if the lookouts had binoculars, they would have seen the ice just 30 seconds earlier. Think about that. 30 seconds. That is all they needed to steer the ship away safely. Because of a missing key, those 30 vital seconds were stolen. This isn't just a theory, this is a matter of public record. In the days following the disaster, official inquiries were held in both the United States and Britain. The surviving lookout, Frederick Fleet, was called to the stand. The questioning was intense. A senator asked him directly, "Do you think, seeing what you saw, that if you had been supplied with binoculars, you could have avoided the collision?" Fleet didn't hesitate. He looked the senator in the eye and said, "We could have seen it a bit sooner." The senator pressed him, "How much sooner?" Fleet replied, "Enough to get out of the way." Those words haunt the transcripts of history. Enough to get out of the way.
And what of David Blair?
The man safe on land. While the world mourned, Blair sat in silence. He wasn't a villain. He was a good officer. But that mistake ate away at him. He kept the key in a small envelope. On it, he wrote a simple, heartbreaking note. "The key to the box on the crow's nest. Unfortunately, I took it with me." The word, unfortunately, carries the weight of 1,500 ghosts. He never profited from it. He never sought fame. He just held on to the physical proof of his regret until the day he died. In 2007, that small, rusty piece of metal, the key that could have saved the Titanic, was sold at an auction for £90,000. It is considered one of the most tragic artifacts in history. We often look for grand conspiracies to explain disasters. We want to believe in monsters or curses, but sometimes the biggest tragedies are caused by the smallest things. A forgotten key, a hurried goodbye, a simple human mistake. And looking back, that is the most terrifying truth of all.